My name is Jael. I'm 50 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am shunned.
Hey, Jael. So, how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
Well, I was born and raised. Um, I was born and raised in the early 70s into a family of Jehovah's Witnesses. My father was, if we're going into the backstory of
Mhm.
it, the story goes that my dad had gotten the truth through his brother, who had been my aunt and uncle, who had been in the organization for quite a while. And my father was always kind of hesitant. He was a Depression era kid, but he was a very progressive liberal thinker, and it just never jibed well with him. However, my mother was coming into the organization. She had been baptized. My uncle and my mother's sister, so my aunt, were in the same congregation. And I think my father, the way the story goes, had gone to a memorial service or something like that, laid on my mother, and it was love at first sight. He
At the
decided,
memorial.
yeah, he wasn't there for anything. He was scoping out chicks, basically, and saw my mom and was like, oh my God, I'm going to marry that woman. So he did what he had to do. So he got baptized and did his due diligence and became a witness, married my mom. They had me about a year later. Um, and yeah, that's how I came to be in the religion.
Your mom, are you saying was she was already a witness?
She had been yeah, she had come to America in the late 60s. And at that point, it was sort of like this, my whole family was coming from another country into the United States. And so it was like one by one. I have a huge family on my mother's side. There's like a million siblings, lots of aunts and uncles, and my abuela. And so one by one they came in. As soon as my aunt came in, as far as I can recollect, the way the story goes is they were living in Manhattan, um, and she had somehow got the religion there and then started preaching to other family members. Then my mother came. She got the religion. Um, and then one by one, except my uncles never were a part of it at all. They actually stayed in Colombia, was where they were from. And so yeah, so they all sort of came in, and that's how my mother became a witness, and they all became witnesses. And eventually they got my abuela, who was the most laid back person that you would ever meet. Was so mellow, but she was also a staunch, devout Catholic, Spanish Catholic. She was the last one to come in. And they worked on her. They needled her. They needled her. And I think at that point, appease my kids. So for a devout Catholic to do that, it's you know,
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal for a devout Catholic
yeah,
to change. And I mean, Colombia is a country of Catholicism, is it not?
it is.
So there's deep roots there, and they
It
got
is.
her to flip.
They got
Yeah.
her to flip. They did. And it took a long time. I mean, my mother and all of my aunts had become witnesses. And yeah, my aunt, they were all in it in the late 60s, 70s. Even my uncles, who were married to my aunts, not my blood uncles. And so my grandmother did not get baptized until I think it was 1986. It was 1987, yes, because one of my uncles had was still living in Colombia, and he was a musician there, and he was a very prominent musician in a town called Medellin. And at that time, Pablo Escobar was on his warpath, his rampage, and he had gone in, had some of his henchmen go into a club where my uncle was performing, and just mowed them down. And my uncle passed, was assassinated. So I think that really made my grandmother think, like, how could this possibly happen? There was some emotional manipulation on my mother's end of it, on my aunt's end of it, because they'd been trying so long to get her into the religion, that they told her, well, he'll be back. You were going to get to see him again in paradise and live forever, right? And that's, I think, what finally sort of broke her staunch Catholic or Catholicism. Her belief system was like, oh, I'll finally get to see my son again. So
well, nothing else. You're seeing that the pressure that was applied to her, okay, to your abuela. Now you're being born into this. You're being born into something that there's so much deep pressure within that it can change a lifelong staunch Catholic over, right?
yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure when you're born into a situation like this, where people are needling and trying to get you in all the time, right?
Yeah.
So you're born into this concept, the religion itself, that being Jehovah's Witnesses. And you've now got all of this family, including family like your abuela, who gave up so much of who she was in order to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So for you being born into this, and then with all this family around and everything else, what did it mean to you growing up in it? What was the worldview that you had? You've got this tight family around you, but how do you see everybody else?
The world, the worldly people, right? That's a word that it's a loaded word. Oh my God. When you grow up as a Jehovah's Witness, when you are from the time you can remember, shown these images, even in the Bible storybook, the little golden yellow, happy Bible storybook, right? And I remember the pink one, that pink one that we used to get, the Great Teacher, I think it was called. They make them so like kid friendly, these happy colors. And then you get to the end section of the part where it's like hellfire, like this is what's going to happen if you're not a good little Jehovah's Witness, you're going to die. So that's your worldview, is that all of those images you see in those illustrations, right, in like a book like my Bible storybook, are worldly people that are being killed by God, by Jehovah. Really? And as a kid, you just don't think about it that way. So my worldview was that all of the people on the outside of the religion, this sphere, right, that we lived in, were bad. They were evil. That's what I was being told. That's what the indoctrination is, that everybody on the outside is harmful. Don't listen to the things that they say, because their mentality is that of a satanic attack, a mentality, and that's very scary to a child. That's very scary to someone prepubescent, to a teenager, And I remember in my
A lot of
20s,
adults are still afraid
that's what I was
of
just going to
people on the
say.
other side. Yeah.
Absolutely. Even into your adulthood, you're like, oh, and I'm sure we'll get to that later about kind of entering the world and being able to, have relationships and form relationships with people that are not witnesses. But yeah, so that was my view. Unfortunately, that was my view. But that's just, you're a kid. That's what you're taught.
Yeah. Can I say, I appreciate you said something. I've never heard anybody say it this way. You said that at the end of the books, there's like hellfire. Now, obviously, we know Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in hell, not a literal fiery hell like a lot of other
Right.
religions. But it is interesting that they still picture the punishment of the evildoers as being, this fire coming down from the heavens.
Brimstone. Yes.
It's not a hellfire, but it's actually, is it a heaven fire? It's coming down from the heavens.
Who knows? It's
weird.
It's raining something.
Yeah.
And it's
fire and sulfur, right?
Exactly. And it's scary because, at that point you've already learned about what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. And that was a scary story because I believe, if I haven't looked at a Bible storybook in 30 something years, but I believe that was depicted in the Bible storybook, and in that depiction, those illustrations were very similar to what would happen with Armageddon. So it's not, like, I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in hell, but it's just this when you think metaphorically hellfire, it's that raining down and just assaulting random worldly people.
Right. So were you afraid of worldly people? Were you, like, as a kid, were you afraid to be around outsiders? Or were you just kept so busy on the inside that you really weren't around outsiders so much?
Yes and no. My father shaped, thank God I had my father, because he was the only sense of stability and sort of balance. He made sense when he spoke. So there was a healthy balance there because my father ended up, well, healthy, unhealthy, whatever, dysfunctional for sure. But when my father came into the religion, and like I said, it was just to marry my mom. And then he really started to see, they started pushing him to be a ministerial servant. They started pushing him to become an elder because he was a very gregarious, magnetic personality. My dad was just, there was nobody that didn't like him. He was warm and wonderful. And so, hey, that's like, right, those elders are like, they're on that. They're like, you would make a great elder, so he was giving talks and yada yada. So when he was a successful businessman, and when 1975 came around, he had sold his business, right? And that was not smart. And he regretted that so much. He goes, why did I do that? Like, but again, that mental manipulation and just believing what they were believing. And then the end of the world was coming in 1975, and sell all your possessions. And because it's coming and we're going to start a new world here. That happened. And when it didn't happen, right, he went, okay, I'm done. This is absurd,
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
So
oh,
1975.
1975. That was it for him.
Helped wake him up.
He woke up. He was done. He goes, okay, to my mother, you can take the girls to the meetings, because of course, as a father, having two daughters, fundamentally the foundations of the religion were good to him, because having daughters and, the basic fundamentals of wanting to keep us safe, I think that he appreciated that part. So he sort of let my mom handle our spirituality in a sense. Um, and he just kind of, you know, he just worked and was the provider and did his own thing. But completely stopped going to the meetings and just fell away, basically, you know. But he did have very strong beliefs. And if the witnesses did try to come around, I remember them coming around and trying to, you know, get him to come back to the meetings and you know, really, really pressured. And he would just, he'd go, no, you need to stop. This isn't going to happen. I'm done with it. You know, in behind closed doors, we didn't hear this, but I later found out from him that that's what he was saying to these elders was, I don't believe what you believe anymore. This is ridiculous. I see so much hypocrisy in your congregations, in this the lionizing, I think, is what he could not stand the most, was this lionization of these circuit overseers and presiding overseers and district overseers and the, you know, the governing body. You know, he really started feeling like it's a Jonestown thing. Like it could be that. He realized it's a cult, you know, and so part of him wanted to keep us safe in the sense that you don't have to believe this if you don't want to, but don't tell your mother I said that.
Imagine what, and
I
don't know if your dad's still around today or
he's
not.
not.
Okay. I was gonna say, imagine what he would think today of the organization with the lionizing of the governing body. I mean, they are worshipped. People flock to them and go to them for photo ops, and it's
disgusting.
It's so bad.
It's disgusting. It really, that's the only, I mean, I find that vile.
Oh, sure.
You know? Yeah. And that's what he saw back then, you know, and he just felt so uncomfortable with that, you know, and not only that, but it was just you know, he was an objective thinker and he, had an education, you know, where he was able to study objectively before he came into the religion. So there was just a lot of things about the religion that never jibed with him, that were not germane, that just it's like, you know, Daniel's prophecies. A lot of it, I remember him saying things like, he had a theory about, you know, the prophets like Ezekiel or John, that, you know, these guys were like old school or the OG Timothy Leary's of Bible times. They were putting wormwood or whatever in their wine. They were tripping, you know, and they were writing all of these prophecies down, you know, and because it was so outrageous.
Yeah, revelation. Absolutely.
The revelation. It's insane. It's a total trip. That is a hallucinogenic, psychotropic, whatever they had back then.
Yeah. Trip. And just like a trip, you can read whatever you want into it, right?
It's your trip, man. It's your
trip.
Everyone
is reading into a trip.
Poor John, you know, these poor guys. Like, wow, you had a bad trip, man. That was a bad trip.
And it's led to a lot of other bad trips, has it not, for other individuals throughout history?
Yeah.
So I could see, you know, from what you're saying a little bit, so your dad then kind of exits stage right as far as the religion goes and absolves himself of the responsibility, spiritually speaking, puts, you know, says, you know, hey, mom can take care of that, and take the kids to the meeting. So what was the atmosphere like in your home growing up? What was it like? Was it harmonious? I mean, because obviously there's a big chasm there and your dad's been hurt by this thing. So I can only imagine it might be kind of tough. So
it was.
What was it like for you guys?
It was contentious. There was a lot of heavy disagreements, let's just put it that way, between my parents. And it wasn't so much directed towards my mother, because my mother had come from, as I mentioned before, a very devout Catholic, Spanish Catholic family, and he understood that. He understood that my mother was very impressionable, and my mother had always sort of been and is um, a social butterfly. She's an extrovert. She needs tons of people around her all the time. My mother always has had an entourage. Let's just put it that way. So he always knew that about her. My father was more, and I don't mean to say in disrespect my mother and saying that she's not an intelligent person. She is, but my father was more intellectual. He had an intellectual depth, and he saw things, saw the world in a different way. So in the household, there were points of contention where, her being so extreme, because she over the years became more and more extreme, more devout, more hyper, or I like to say she's an uber witness, and that started happening throughout the 80s and the 90s, where she was just having these circuit overseers come for luncheons and, really preoccupying herself with, the ministry. She eventually became a pioneer. And so there were certain things that, really bothered him, because he saw the hypocrisy. He saw that what she was doing was putting these men on a pedestal, and it wasn't a jealousy thing. It was more like, really, what are you doing? Like, they're just men. They're imperfect. They have faults. They have flaws. Please don't treat them like they're, like they're royalty. What is this, And so that led to some discontent in the household, for sure.
Your mom saw 1975 too, right?
Oh yeah.
So isn't it interesting how things like that, I hear people all the time saying things like, this is the thing that's going to bring down the tower. This is the thing that's going to make everyone leave. They didn't leave after 1975. Those people sold their businesses, gave up livelihoods, cashed out life insurance, gave everything to the cult. And then after getting that emotional beating, after it came back and said, "Oh, can I have another?" You know what I'm saying? I mean, they were basically captive to that abuse,
Yeah.
and they did not leave. So it sounds like, so your mom, I don't know, just wonder, after 1975, obviously you were talking 80s and later, she was starting to become this uber witness. I just wonder if she even became more so after that, and it had anything to do with 1975.
I think that, in all honesty, my mother is a tenacious woman, and I love her for that. I do. But that drove that, almost challenging my father. I think that was part of it, was just this obstinance, and kind of like, well, fine, if you don't want to be involved with this anymore, I'm not going to follow your lead. And I'm just going to do it because all my friends are, and that was part of it too, was most of their friends in the religion stayed in the religion. So, I mean, the generations for me, go way back. The congregation that I was in a congregation with people who were witnesses from the beginning. I mean, we're out there in New York, in the city, with the placards. I remember studying with one of those women as a kid, so I think that was most of it for her, was just them, was the the witnesses sort of saying, don't leave, don't, you can do this alone as a sort of single parenting in the religion. And that's why she stayed. But there was definitely an obstinance and a stubbornness there, for sure.
Right. But they also, give you an identity. You're now the single mom. You're now the mom of the divided household. And you're this example. Not only that, sometimes, when we believe in something and we make a bold claim like 1975 is going to be the end of the world, and it doesn't happen, sometimes people feel like they need to double down because, whereas it could have been a turning point for them, their ego gets wrapped up in it, and they're like, well, this has to be right. I said that this was right, and I've told everybody.
Exactly.
I've got to keep going at this because it has to be right. I need to be right.
You just hit the nail on the head right there. I need to be right. And that's what it was for her. And that's what it was for, as you said, so many other people was, oh God, I gave up all this. I gave everything up. It can't be wrong. I can't be wrong. This denial. So they just continued with it. And then plus, there was, like I said before, these people, these members of the congregation that I was in that had just gone back generations as Jehovah's Witness, as Russellites, and so for them, they were like, this is old hat. We went through Rutherford and and his love letter to Hitler, so yeah, why not? We'll stick in it. We'll stick with it for another, what are we going on?
It's been a long
50
time.
years.
It's been a long time. And what you see there is sunk cost, right? They've already put all this into it, and so now they're afraid to walk away from it.
Exactly.
We've already been through these battles and wars, so why walk away now?
Yeah.
So did you find any solace in school? Was school difficult for you, or did you maybe find an outlet in there and find any friends with kids, or were they worldly and terrifying too?
Yeah, no, I did find a lot of solace in school. My sanctuary was the library because, as you know, when you're a Jehovah's Witness in school,
oh yeah,
there's the Christmas parties and there's the Halloween parties and there's there's every party that you cannot go to. And I was the only witness in my school. I was the only witness. I was biracial. I was, we talked about this a little bit before. I was born, my birthday's Christmas. So I was born on Christmas Day. So, as I said before, it's like that started a life of just complete and utter irony, and also was a great harbinger that I probably wasn't going to be a very successful Jehovah's Witness. So in school, getting sent to the library because you couldn't, participate in these holiday celebrations, whatever it was. I just fell in love with reading. I fell in love with, became my world were books, books and music, and in school, I did have some friends. I always felt like I just explained being so different from everyone else. I felt, so alienated, because not only are you not able to play sports, and I was very athletic as a kid. And I remember, my gym teacher, I actually snuck onto the basketball team because I'm tall, I'm very tall. And I had these long arms and volleyball. And so I snuck onto soccer, volleyball, track and field, and basketball. And I told my parents, well, my father knew, but I told my mother that I was just getting after school help for math because I was terrible at math. So I managed to sneak my way on, but when it came to actually playing games, that became really hard. And my mom found out, and I was like, sorry, I got to quit, So that really sucked,
That's terrible to have it and then have it taken away for no good reason.
Yeah. I remember my father feeling so bad about that because he was so proud of me. He was so proud that, I was finding finally this group, and they were worldly girls. And at that time, these different, teams that I was on was, girls basketball and volleyball. And I was finding these friendships, and it's everybody knows that when you play sports as a kid, that creates the ability to be a team player later on in life. So it was actually helping me so much because I was able to form these friendships and start learning how to be a team player, not feeling like such an alien, in school. And then when it was taken away, it was like, and then they were mad at me. And then those friendships kind of had to dissipate because they were upset with me that I quit.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Right now, it's the Little League World Series has been on TV, and I always get a kick out of that, like to watch it, and to see, I think they're 12 and 13-year-olds, to see all these kids, boys mostly, but there are some girls who play as well. They've got their arms around each other and they're chanting and they're swaying and they're having a great time. And these are memories that they'll have their whole lives. And to think that none of us got those opportunities.
Yep.
I would have loved to have played baseball or any sport as a kid. I love sports, and I do think that, to your point, the teamwork aspect is what we missed out of it. Somehow we were all on the same team as Jehovah's Witnesses, but we weren't very united, and there was backbiting, and it was terrible, and there wasn't a lot of fun being had in a lot of ways. But to be able to play a sport, baseball, volleyball, basketball, whatever, I mean, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got to experience it for a minute, but I'm sad that it was then ripped away from you.
It was a brief but wonderful experience in time. And I think the pain of it was that, I was not only was I disappointing my teammates, but also my coaches, because they just couldn't understand, like you have a 10-year-old, 11, I'm trying to think of how old I was, explain to you that, well, my religion doesn't condone, for lack of a better word, team sports because it's competition. And they're like, what? And I don't remember getting any backup support from my parents. Like I said, my dad felt bad, but he didn't go and talk to my coaches. So it was me, being this little kid, just kind of like, I can't. And I remember them being just really disappointed in me. So that sucked too, because it was like, not only are you disappointing your friends, you're disappointing adults, like these coaches that were really trying to help you, and most of those coaches were teachers, because I grew up in a very small town, and so they eventually got over it, you know what I mean? But I had to find in school other ways to excel. And so the things that I could do were chorus. Like we were allowed to do chorus. So I remember, taking the athletic side of me now had to sort of like, I was using more of my right brain and getting into more of my art classes and my music classes and doing school plays and things like that. We were allowed to do. So I think I was just always trying to be a part of, be a part of the world at a young age, because I just hated being a Jehovah's Witness so much. I hated it. I can remember being, a kid and thinking, why me? Why did I have to be born this way? Why did I have to be born like this? You know, why couldn't my parents have been Catholics? Like, why couldn't I have been in a different religion? Why did it have to be this one?
And I want to get to how you felt in the religion here in just a second. But if memory serves, when you initially wrote me, you wrote something. You mentioned earlier that your birthday was on Christmas Day, the double whammy of holidays. But wasn't there some circumstances around you being born on Christmas Day? Because I know you said it sets you up for this life of irony.
Yeah.
You created this whole Jehovah's Witness piece of your life. What was it that happened when you were to be born, I guess?
So the story goes is that my due date was after Christmas. It was like it was like December 27th or something like that. And so I was early, and my mother started to go into labor like late Christmas Eve. And so she refused to go to the hospital. She's like, I am not having this baby on Christmas Day. This baby will not be born on a pagan holiday. It will not happen. And my father, trying to talk sense, and of course all these hormones are surging through her and everything, but it's still completely irrational. And he's had to like trick her basically into getting into the car and going to the hospital. I don't know. I can't remember what he said. Something like, let's just go for a ride and see if it goes away. And they show up at the hospital. My mother's like, no, how could you do this to me? So, already she was mad at him. And I'm somehow, probably absorbing that stress and anxiety in utero, so there my social anxiety, my anxiety was created. And then by, being born on Christmas Day, yeah. She tried to hold me in.
You just have to just think about that. That is not healthy and rational. To try to hold a baby in,
I know,
so that they are not born on a pagan holiday.
I know.
It does really. I like when you told me the story. It struck me. It does set you up. It's like, well, here's what your life's about to be. Because this is not typical. This is certainly atypical.
Well, it's so funny too, because it's like, I talk about, and we'll probably get into this a little bit more, but, my anxiety disorder, I really truly feel that it started then. And because you got to think about it, when a baby's born on Christmas Day in the hospital, this is in the early 70s, people could still smoke in a hospital then, you know what I mean? We're going back, like we're going way back. So you have doctors and nurses that are working on Christmas. They could not have been too happy about that, and then, you have this couple come in where the husband is like trying to, talk to the mother, who's completely irrational, and she's screaming at the nurses and screaming at the doctors, like, not doing it. I'm not
Keep it in.
Keep it in. I can't do it. Not on Christmas Day. So, the whole environment surrounding my birth, I think was just so filled with negative energy, that later on in life, whether or not I was a Jehovah's Witness or not, you know what I mean? It could have been any situation, just led to, me having sort of, having anxiety and panic disorder, because I was born in an environment that was not calm and relaxing. It wasn't There wasn't a doula.
No,
I
and
wasn't being,
a symbol of things to come.
no,
So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I said before, the harbinger was a sort of foreboding
yes.
of things to come. Yes.
So you were born as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, or born into that environment. So what you said earlier that you hated being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So what was your time then like at the Kingdom Hall growing up? Did you have friends? Did you enjoy any part of it, like giving talks or going out in service or anything? Or did you just hate every second of it?
Hated every second of it. Hated it. I was always a misfit, a complete and utter misfit. I was, we talked about having ADD, which, I feel like I have everything, you know what I mean? I think a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses do. But no, I remember, going through the course of my time as Jehovah's Witness, being a little kid and you're sitting there and it's so incredibly boring. It's just this, men, speaking from a podium. And, I brought up the Charlie Brown, like that, womp, womp, womp. That's all I heard in my little kid head, was, and I had to get up a lot. So I would be like, Mom, can I go to the bathroom? Like I think that was our thing, and there were a couple of other little friends I had in the kingdom, in the congregation, that would be like, we'd look at each other, we'd be like, and we'd ask, and like, we'd all, go to the bathroom. It's like, let's take a cigarette break, we're going to go to the bathroom. And we would just, go in there and like try to hang out for a couple of minutes before our moms, or parents figured out what was going on, and, reeling us back into the congregation, into the Kingdom Hall. And so, yeah, it was very boring. It was very monotonous. And I think that another thing that I wanted to address was that walking into a kingdom, how this feels, and some of your listeners and viewers who were ex-Jehovah's Witnesses will understand how this feels. Walking into a kingdom hall is like, I compare it to being in an MRI. Have you ever been in an MRI? Like, it's just,
Yeah, I have.
It's the noise and the lights and
It's overstimulating.
It's overstimulation, but then there's this incredibly claustrophobic feeling as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me was sort of how it felt whenever I would walk. And I remember this at an early age, like being a really, really small child and always getting this like nervous energy, this anxious feeling, like, oh God, we're going to the meeting. Oh no. And I would get so nervous. And I'd walk into that kingdom hall and all I could feel was just everybody's guilt swirling. And then you have this like fluorescent light on you, and you have this, this very fake sort of people walking around and greeting you and talking and all of that insanity, because like you had to be there early, that was always encouraged. And you had to sit in the front row, because that made you a better witness somehow. And, you had to comment and you had to give your talks and your, whatever else you were doing. But it's just that overall sense of this just negative energy swirling about, like, it was like everybody's guilt. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just,
I get it.
Yeah, everybody's guilt is just in there. And it's just packed into this kingdom hall because they're dragging all their baggage in, and they really feel like if they go to the meeting, they're going to be, redeemed somehow. And I felt that. And I think that, there are people who are a little more hypersensitive to that. And I definitely felt that as a child. So going to the kingdom hall and the meetings was always a sense of dread for me, as long as I could remember, even going up into my, into my teenage years, into my 20s. It was just always scary. I never liked the elders, and we'll get to that. It was just a lot of people masking. And
Oh yeah.
I picked up on that at a young age. Just, you're so fake. This is so fake. Be a real person for 1 minute. Could you just be a real human being for 1 minute?
No. Because well, first of all, most of them don't know who they are enough to be their authentic self and to be a real human being.
Yeah.
But yes, I remember as a kid as well. I remember saying in the nicest way that I could to my mom, because I knew I couldn't just tell her everybody's fake. But I just realized, like, I just remember saying as a teenager, like, these articles written to young people are garbage. Like, nobody talks like this. This isn't how human beings speak to one another. And I could realize that even then, even though it took me so much longer to ever leave. But and then what you said about the MRI, I didn't feel that way when I was younger. I think I had a lot of good friends at the Kingdom Hall, and I think that made it fun for me, because I did have a lot of guy friends, and we'd go play together and play sports and do things. So that was, if I didn't have that, yeah, I probably would have. But later in life, I would literally drive to the Kingdom Hall, park, and I could not get out of my car to go inside that building. And you saying that, it feels like, because I remember the anxiety I had going into my first one and only MRI. I was like, ooh, I am kind of claustrophobic anyway, a little bit of an anxious person. I do not know that I like the thought of this at all. And that is a good metaphor for it. It really is. That's a great example, because it's like, man, I see the machine over there, and I'm not sure I want to go get chewed up by this machine.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just, I completely can relate to you when you said later on driving up to the hall and just not being able to go in. And I did that many times. There were times where I was in a meeting and I felt so much anxiety that I would go out into my car to get away from it and to like take a few breaths. I think I was having a panic disorder, or a panic attack, and didn't realize it, because of course they don't give you any kind of mental health advice. So you don't know what it is that you're going through or experiencing. But I would be sitting, and I always later on, as when I was an adult, would sit in the back, because I would come in late and I would leave as soon as the meeting was over, so I didn't have to interact with anyone.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that relief like when you walked out of the Kingdom Hall to go sit in your car?
Oh, it was like, should I just, okay, now everybody thinks I'm a weirdo, which they already did. And, because I mentioned before, I was a misfit, and I always was. I just never fit in to the end. I just did not fit in at all. I remember going to like gatherings, and they would start, I don't know, something ridiculous, playing guitar, like the songs, the kingdom. Yes, the kingdom song. I'm so far removed. Sometimes I forget what they call certain things.
That's a good thing.
I know it is. It really is a good thing. But yeah, it's like, oh, it's this kumbaya moment. Like, seriously, you know what I mean? Like, I had, again, that was from my father. My father, his favorite comedian was George Carlin. And I remember like watching, he would let me, like when I was little, growing up on like SNL. So I had that. That was the dichotomy, was like, okay, you have this uber witness mother, and then you have this father who is just like, had his pulse on, had his finger on the pulse, I should say, of just like being normal, And so I think that my father's presence had such a huge impact on the way I looked at the world and the way I looked at Jehovah's Witnesses and Jehovah's Witnesses as a religion, as a cult, as an organization. So yeah, I would just be the misfit kid. I'd be the kid that was like doing Eddie Grimley impersonations. You know what I mean? Like just the kid that was like, let's go, let's watch SNL, or you know what I mean? It was just, and they were like zombies,
Sure.
Yeah.
So as the misfit kid, so I was going to ask, how things progressed as you went into your teens and young adulthood. One of the hallmarks that often comes within there is baptism. So was that a thing for you? How did you get there? Just how did things go as you started to get closer to independence and adulthood?
My father, again, I speak of my dad a lot because he had such an incredible influence in my life, and I'm so thankful for that. But all of my friends were getting baptized very young. Like I think there was a girl that was 9 years old, and then some of them were like 12, and as we were going through those formative years, 13, 14, right? And so I was the last one out of my circle of friends in the congregation. And I didn't really want to, because I actually knew what it meant. Like, I knew that if I got baptized, I was going to get disfellowshipped at some point. Like, I knew it was going to happen eventually, right? So, I was okay with being reproved at 12 years old for smoking in the bathroom in high school. You know what I mean? I was like, I was like, okay, yeah, I can deal with the reproval. That means I don't have to comment. Yes. That means I don't have to give talks. It's like, this is great.
And am I correct in saying back then, so you weren't baptized yet, right? When you were reproved. Back then, I believe they actually reproved you, even if you were like an unbaptized publisher or something like that.
Yes.
Like, you didn't have to be baptized to be put on public reproof or private reproof, whatever.
Yes.
And they,
I
about you sometimes, or
what's that?
Did they give, like, today they have marking talks for people where they'll just kind of say, hey, watch out for this person.
Yes.
They do that to you?
I was never marked. Okay. I had been privately reproved. So, but everybody knew when you were privately reproved, because if you weren't commenting and you weren't giving talks, right? I had been publicly reproved at least twice before I was baptized. So that was like 3 times, right? And one time was because I'd gone to a heavy metal concert.
Who'd you see?
Oh my God. This is embarrassing. But for those of you who are, young enough, you probably won't have never heard of any of these bands, but it was Cinderella. It was a three show. It was Cinderella was the headliner. Winger.
Yeah.
Winger, and it was more hair metal. It wasn't heavy metal to me, and the Bullet Boys, who had kind of like a one-hit wonder, but they actually were the best ones. So anyhow, I digress. But yeah, so I got reproved for going to a concert, and it was funny because there was my mother went to the concert with me.
Okay.
Yeah, like there was a group of us.
Reproved?
I know, Michael. I know. This is the thing. So we had a group of us. There was my sister and her friend. My sister was 6 years older than me, and her best friend was sort of like fun. She like kind of had her 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You know what I mean? Kind of person, and definitely a double life. And so she was like, hey, let's get a group together, and this Cinderella's coming to town. So it was a bunch of us, And the only way that our parents would let us go is if, one parent was with us. So there were actually I think there were three parents with us. And so we go to the concert and we had blasts. You know what I mean? I was like 14, I think. And maybe I had to have my mother there. I can't remember exactly the circumstances behind it all. But anyhow, so like a few days later, my mother is approached by one of the elders, and the other adult that was with us was approached as well, and they said, that's not good behavior. Like that you shouldn't be going to these concerts. And so we were all taken one by one into the elders' room, and there were 7 of us. I can't remember why not all of us were reproved, because the hierarchy in
Yes.
the congregation. So some of the people that were in our group had elders for dads, so they I think were put on private reproof. And then some of us who were on the lower tier, let's just put it that way, like myself,
Had unbelieving fathers.
Yes, had unbelieving fathers, divided households, whatever, what have you, being raised by, in the religion by their mothers, were not treated quite as well. So I was publicly reproved, and my sister was as well. One of my other friends in the same situation as me, her father was not a witness. Yeah, so it was like half of us got privately reproved, half of us didn't, and maybe somebody else got away with it completely. I don't know. I don't remember, but yeah, that actually happened for going to a concert.
With your mom.
With my mom, who did not get reproved.
She didn't rock as hard as you all did.
She did not. She was not doing that. The devil.
Jael got it.
I know. I think about it now, and it's like, man, I hated those bands. Like, I hated the hair bands. I was into like Motorhead. I'm like, why I could have wasted it on or used it on a Motorhead concert. Instead of Cinderella. But but anyhow, so yeah, so that was one of my reprovals. So anyhow, I ended up getting baptized at 15 because I was, like I said, the last one. I was the last Mohegan, so to speak, and I was being heavily pressured to get baptized. And I'm like, the heck with it. Let's just do the plunge, And I did it. And, I knew it was going to happen, like I said, and so, I looked at it like, well, if I do this, if I'm going to be a witness for the rest of my life and I don't get baptized and I wait till I'm like in my 20s, they're just going to they're going to continue to pressure me. They're going to continue to, just like, basically put your head in a vice and squeeze it until you do it, or, some sort of waterboarding. Yeah. Whatever.
Well, eventually they got to your abuela, right?
They got to my abuela.
That's
bamboo under their fingernails. Like,
right.
I just, when you're that age, you're so impressionable. It's such a tenuous age that you just don't know what to do, and I remember talking to my father about it, and he goes, well, and again, he was he wanted me to stay in the witness just because of the morals, for the morality, which didn't work.
Well, and you could have morals outside of Jehovah's Witnesses anyway, and also,
yeah,
get into
he knew that
sin and everything else.
Yeah, he knew and understood that, but I think he just felt like if this is the religion that I had to be in, yeah.
He probably thought you were protected in it in some way.
Exactly. Which, oh my God.
We all know is not the case.
I had so many friends. Unfortunately, it never happened to me, but I had so many friends that were molested. And, you know, this is such a horrible and heavy topic to get onto. And I was kind of like contemplating whether or not I wanted to talk about it, but I was not molested. My sister was, and it was just something that I still can't believe to this day was just completely swept under the carpet. I knew of at least 5 other girls who were so young. I mean, like 6, 7 years old, that had been molested, and by, you know, either adults or boys that were like 12, 13. And they were scared, you know, and they didn't understand. They were completely confused by it. Like, oh, this is happening, but they said it's okay because someday we'll get married. Or how can you say that to a 5 or 6 year old? You know, it's so bizarre. It's
you can't reason through it. It's not a reasonable.
It's disgusting.
And honestly, a lot of times, you know, so let's say those 12, 13-year-old boys, my question is always what happened to them?
Right.
That's not necessarily normal behavior either.
Exactly.
So, you know, just it rolls
it's
down.
Nasty.
It's so terrible.
It is. And you're right, you know, because you think about it later on. And I remember coming out, you know, when I broke away and woke up, hearing that some of those boys had been abused by their own fathers or by other elders in the congregation, you know, and of course it's no excuse, but it's.
Yeah, but you just see how the pattern is.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just really sad. Everybody is just getting traumatized and hurt.
Traumatized in so many, every facet of trauma imaginable goes on in this religion.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
You are assaulted in so many different directions, emotionally, spiritually, you know, psychologically, however you want to put it. It's coming at you in every direction, you know, and they don't care. They do not care.
No, they don't. They don't. I mean, they think that shunning, which is psychological abuse, they think that's loving.
It's discrimination.
So,
you know, shunning, disfellowshipping to me is discrimination.
Sure.
You know, I think that there's I feel like it's the Netherlands that just passed a law against Jehovah. Do you know about that Jehovah's Witnesses, that it's deemed a discriminatory now, and they're not allowed to do it anymore? Am I correct in saying that?
Well, I don't know if they're not. I don't know if. Look, you can't force people to talk to other people.
Yeah.
Or not. And so it's a difficult thing to get rid of shunning, though I would love to see that happen, particularly organizationally sanctioned, institutionally enforced and coerced shunning. But I mean, so yeah, you can let the people go back to the Kingdom Hall, but you're not going to be able to force. The brothers and sisters know what's up.
Right.
They're still going to shun that person. You know?
Yeah.
They're still going to.
Right.
Because they know the rules.
Yeah, but at least it's being recognized now, which I never ever in a million years, when I heard that, I never in a million years thought that was even possible, that was ever going to happen. Like the actual, you know, like an institution, a government would say.
I hope eventually they lose their charitable status. What kind of charity breaks up families?
Exactly. It's a violation of human rights.
Yeah. I wish everyone well in that fight.
Yeah.
Fighting against religion, particularly in the United States. I can't speak to other countries, but in the United States, fighting against religion is a tough road.
Yeah.
Religion has a lot of power. and
It
they
certainly does.
get together on these lawsuits too.
Yeah.
So, but no, I would love to see something done there. It is discrimination.
Allow me to break in here for a second. This channel is made possible by you, the listener. If you appreciate what we're doing here, please consider supporting at patreon.com/shunned, or leave a review on iTunes or other platforms. Like and subscribe. All those things help the channel. If you're looking for merch, you can go get some Shun swag from the shunnedpodcast.com website, or reach out there to be on the show. If you're looking for more ex-Jehovah's Witness content, I'll recommend my first podcast called This JW Life. You can find that on podcast apps as well as YouTube. And if you're feeling stuck in life, struggling to find happiness and community, maybe you're haunted by the past, beating yourself up, unsure of who you are or what you even want out of life now that you've lost this one identity that was given to you by a cult, reach out through my other sites like ex-JWhelp.com, that's ex-JWhelp.com, or storyworkscoaching.com. And let's see about working together to help you find a life that fits you and who you are, maybe for the first time ever. And now, back to our guest.
So yourself, you knew you were getting baptized, and you knew eventually that was a thing for you, right? You knew that discrimination may face you at some point, because that's not, you knew that it didn't seem like you ever thought that the witness life was the one for you.
No.
But you took the plunge anyway, right?
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, literally. And did anything change for you afterward? Did you feel like more guilt about who you were, or that you needed to do more things in the Kingdom Hall, go pioneer, do things, fit in?
Did I feel like I had an epiphany of some sort? No. Did I feel like, they always say it's like, oh, when you get baptized, it's just this magical feeling, like, oh, it's just your sins, everything's just washed away, and you come out, you emerge from the pool, and you're different. And I didn't feel that at all. I felt the same. I felt like I just got my hair wet. Now I have to do my hair over again and my makeup all over again. I'm 15. You know what I mean? That's important when you're a 15-year-old girl. Yeah, no, I didn't feel that way at all. So I, as far as pioneering was concerned, I never enjoyed, none of us ever enjoyed, going door to door. That was always just the most uncomfortable and just terrifying part of being a Jehovah's Witness. I think most ex-Jehovah's Witnesses will say that, and it's like, we talked about like pre-interview a little bit, is the way I felt when I was going door to door was in telling the householder that they are wrong about everything that they've ever believed in. And I'm right. And that never occurred to me until later on, and that that whole thought process that, again, we're indoctrinated to believe this, and to actually go out into the public and knock on people's doors, and they're not expecting us. And you're talking about Armageddon, and you're talking about, if you don't come over to our side, basically, in a nutshell, you know what I mean? Or the whole point of your time spent at the door of a householder is just saying, like, you're wrong, I'm right, and when I looked at that in retrospect, I realized that now, because I actually have been on the other side of the door when witnesses come, and actually have felt how that feels, and you say to yourself, it's like, it's bewildering. Mm-hmm. It's bewildering how you can you know what I mean? Just have this total stranger show up at your doorstep and say, well, Armageddon's coming soon. And, basically, if you don't do anything about it, you're going to die.
Yeah. Yes.
I remember my sister used to say, my sister was hilarious. She had a great sense of humor, but she would say this thing whenever, we'd get rejected at the door if we were at the door together, and we'd walk away back to the car, and she'd be like, well, you're going to die, like sarcastically,
Yes. Oh, yeah. Or I'll live in your house after Armageddon. For some of us, I always thought the most cringy thing was going out Christmas Day with the Christmas magazines, because the Christmas magazines were just there to tell them that their holiday was wrong. So I'm going to come to your house on your holiday and hand you a magazine that tells you what you're doing right now, where you're enjoying your time with friends and family, is wrong. I always just thought that was the worst. I hated that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even find, it's ineffable. I cannot find the words to express how in the moment I didn't understand, because that's just our training, but afterward, I'm speechless that I actually did that to people. You know what I mean? Too. And it's like, anybody who's watching this and you saw me at your door, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
If you ever saw me at your door, my apologies.
I'm so sorry.
It is cringy to look back.
It's so cringy. So cringy.
So you weren't going to pioneer or anything like that. That wasn't really what was in the cards for you.
Not at that point.
Not at that point. Okay.
But we'll get there. There's
so how
more.
did things go as you went through? I mean, 15, you're in high school, so you're approaching 18. That's usually a pivotal moment for a lot of people. So how did things progress for you that way?
So I went to a very progressive independent high school, and it was sort of like a junior college. It was a very free thinking liberal school that its focus was mainly on the arts. And that was when I first started to learn how to study objectively. And that made a giant difference in my, my whole thinking and my thought process. And I remember having one of my teachers actually was a man called Wally Lamb. You may have heard of him. He's a very prominent writer.
Yes, I have heard of him.
Yes. And Mr. Lamb was wonderful because I started to write a lot because I was miserable, and I was in this religion that I hated, and I hated my life. I was depressed. And so I would just write. He ran something called the writing lab, and we'd go into the writing lab if we needed help with papers or whatever. And so, I just remember talking to him one day, and he would read my work, and it was mostly about the religion and feeling like, a stranger in a strange land. And he said, wow, I don't know what you're going through, but this alone, these pieces that I'm reading are really eye-opening. And if you feel the need, because you're in a safe environment here, and I felt so safe in school and in the writing lab, he goes, why don't you read this? And he gave me books. He gave me, he actually gave me, I wish I would have brought that one up. He gave me a book by C.S. Lewis called The Screwtape Letters. Now, C.S. Lewis, wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. A lot of his work, as you know, probably was a very Christian writer, and was very good friends with J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings. So anyhow, he gave me The Screwtape Letters, and The Screwtape Letters is just this fantastic book about a demon who's training his nephew, who is also a demon, and they're exchanging these letters, basically. It's Screwtape to his nephew, talking about how to change people, humans into, like indulging in their desires and whatnot, right? And it was such a great book. And it was the first time I had ever read anything that was like, wow. And I loved it, and then he started giving me other books like Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which is a fantastic book because if anybody out there is watching this, I'm telling you, read these books, because Jonathan Livingston Seagull is all about a seagull basically who's in this community, is in this order, like a congregation. And there are actually elders of seagulls in this congregation, and he's going through this training and, to be a better seagull, and it was very relatable to me because it made so much sense that it was similar to being a Jehovah's Witness, and then he broke away and was free. So I have to thank Mr. Lamb for that, because he opened my eyes a great deal to thinking a little more intellectually and broadening my mind. And that was, I was lucky enough. A lot of people aren't lucky enough to go to a school like that, but I was. And so I just took a ton of classes, a ton of writing classes, a ton of philosophy classes and theory classes, or theology. There were some theology classes there because I wanted to explore other religions. Because I felt like, we had that one book. Remember that one book we had that talked about the different religions?
For God.
Which one?
Mankind's Search for God.
Yes.
Talked about different religions.
Yes, that one. And I loved that book just because it was, it was actually interesting to me. I think it was one of the only books that was interesting to me.
I'm sure it was very slanted in the
totally
given, but yeah, it was
absolutely. But it was just the fact that they come out with a book about other religions. Oh my goodness. Wow. That was kind of,
You never did a lot with that book.
No. And that's probably why I liked it so much. So, but anyhow, it was just interesting to me, and so as I graduated from high school and at 17, and, was still living with my parents, and I really had desperately wanted to go to college, and of course, we all know how that's frowned upon. And that was always something that bothered me a great deal, because I loved learning. I'm a perpetual learner. I always had been. I wanted to just explore more and, just be able to learn about things in an objective manner instead of what was being crammed down my throat, and this spiritual food, And so I ended up going, my parents were like, okay, and went to community college because they felt like that was safe, But, I remember the first semester taking a bunch of classes. I took a psychology class and, I think I took a theater class. I took an English class, and it was just it was a great experience because it was an escape. But the problem was that once I started challenging my peers in the religion and in the congregation, and asking questions, they did not like that because they couldn't answer them, and my mother certainly was fearful. So they kind of could have kibosh on the whole college experience at that point. So I was like, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm out of here. I ran away when I was 18. So
was that the driving force behind it? Was them basically squelching your voice at that time and saying also that you can no longer go to this school?
Yeah, it was, my father was proud of the fact that I was going to school. He felt like that was important. And yet what was happening, I think, was he was sensing that I was going to leave the religion. And I don't think that he liked that.
Why's that?
Again, it's that protection.
He thought it was still a protective environment for you.
He did. I think that, in terms of having boys in my life, you know what I mean? And
Oh, he thought they would be better, treat you better type of boys.
What's that?
Do you think that the boys in the congregation would have been maybe more moral or chaste, or would treat you better and were safer?
The safe choice. Yeah. Yeah. Because they I think my parents knew that I was never going to marry anybody, that I was never going to marry anybody in the religion. I was just too much of I was too outspoken. I was too, too sarcastic, had no filter, would say whatever came to my mind, would be challenging. Because it didn't, this was a religion that, had to be your way of life. And I didn't want it to be my way of life anymore. And I was at that age discovering my truth, not somebody else's truth. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens when you're a Jehovah's Witness, is you are getting somebody else's truth crammed down your throat. And you are not allowed to discover your truth. And I think that scared my parents, because they realized that I was coming into my own and I was discovering my truth.
So you no longer fit in the tiny box of beliefs that comes prepackaged from Jehovah's Witnesses, and they could see that, and so they tried to fit you back into that box, and you said, nope, gotta go.
Yeah, like a bird in a cage. Yeah. And I'm like, I gotta spread my wings and fly. And I did.
So where do you fly to at 18?
I know. That was scary. That was very scary, because I had worldly friends, at that point from college and high school even, that were like, you can come stay with me. Don't worry. They knew how crazy it was, and so I was fortunate enough to have people that were very supportive of me leaving. And so I ended up kind of doing a lot of couch surfing at first. I'd stay at one friend's house and kind of like we were taking turns, and then eventually I had met my boyfriend during college. I met in college, and couldn't live with him because his parents didn't really like that. But then eventually they were like, okay. So I ended up living with them, and I remember my parents coming over to talk to his parents, and they were like, well, she's not, she's welcome here, but we understand that she is an adult. She's got to make that choice. And, it was weird. It was so weird to see my parents kind of groveling almost for me to come back home, because I'd never seen them do that before. It was always, control and like, that was just very, I think about it now, it just, I can't put the words to it, to the feeling, but it was very bizarre. And so I ended up getting pregnant at 19. And what do you do with that one? You know what I mean? It's like, wow, now you're stuck, because unfortunately my boyfriend at the time couldn't deal with it, and he didn't want anything to do with it. So where do you go? You go back home. That's the only place you can go, and I was stuck. I was like, oh my God, I thought about my options and couldn't go through with those options, and decided to thank God keep my child, who's 27 now. She's amazing. And so I went back home, and I remember my mother had, and this is before I got pregnant. She knew I was having sex, and she actually, this is disgusting, but I'm going to say it anyway, just for effect. That's how crazy this religion is, and how, members of this religion behave. She dug through my garbage and found a contraceptive sponge, and said, "I know you're having sex." And I was like, "Oh, geez." And well, at least I'm being careful about it, right? At least I'm getting credit for that. You never told me about birth control. They don't teach that.
Yeah, I had to figure this out on my own, right?
Right? Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses don't teach you anything about birth control or sexual being safe sexually. So yeah, I didn't get any credit for that. But instead, what she decided to do was immediately call the presiding overseer and say, she's having sex, and freaked out. He comes over, it was like she called 911, Jehovah's Witness 911. It was like he was over in 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes with his little minion, right? Because they got to go by 2. And I panicked because she didn't tell me that she's called them. And so I to number one, to know that your mother is actively searching for ways to get you into trouble. It's one thing.
Just that happens a lot. Many people is like the Gestapo comes in and raids your room and is trying, the second that you're away. I don't know. I want to say mom, because it seemed like it was, maybe dads did it too, but everybody I knew, it was always their mom came into their room and was going through everything, trying to find something incriminating.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I, as a mother, I have 2 amazing daughters. They're in their 20s. That thought of what my mother did to me, I would never even think about doing something like that to my children. And fortunately, we got out of the religion before they were little when I was still in it. But fortunately, that never happened. And even if we had been, I would never, ever cross that line, that boundary of trust, and I never trusted my mother anyway, because she was constantly getting me into trouble, calling the elders about this and about that, and all those stupid little things I do, but whatever, even though she took me to a hair metal concert. But so they come over, this presiding overseer and his little flunky, and I ran upstairs into the bathroom, and I turned the shower on because I'm I didn't know what to do. I was going to crawl out the window and run away again, And so I just remember that, and they chased me up the stairs. And were pounding on the bathroom door. I took a small bureau that was in the bathroom and pushed it in front of the door because there was no lock on the door. And so that they were going to try to come in. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I'm freaking out and I'm screaming. I'm go away. I'm this is an encroachment on my rights as a human being, And they said something to the effect of will you talk to us about your behavior and, what you've been doing or something like that? And I said, no. I'm get the fuck out of here, and they did. And so that was seen as a infraction. I don't know what you want to call it. That
sure,
was,
yeah,
that was
you
seen
did not
as,
submit to their authority.
did not submit. So I was disfellowshipped at that point.
So
and I was pregnant.
you were
And I was,
18, 19?
this happened. Yeah. I was pregnant at 19 going into, I was almost turning 20.
They chased a 19-year-old pregnant woman
Yes.
into a bathroom
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
beat on the door.
Yeah.
And because you would not talk to them in
Yeah.
that manner,
Yeah.
uh, they disfellowshipped you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
It's just crazy.
I know.
It's they have no boundaries, Joe. And I'm sure anyone listening, just think about the lack of boundaries of the Jehovah's Witnesses in your life. They have zero boundaries. They think they have the right to any part of you that they want. You are an object to be controlled. You are not an individual sovereign human being with rights of your own.
Absolutely.
That's just a wild image to picture you running up the steps and them running in after you. And then they disfellowship you. So you're 19, you get disfellowshipped, you're pregnant. I guess you were going to get disfellowshipped anyway. Well, I don't know. I guess they could have maybe reproved you or something. But I mean, if you have a baby, there's the evidence, and then.
Well, it was my attitude.
But the attitude, because you wouldn't submit.
Exactly. It was, that's what it was, and honestly, I was a rebel. And looking back now at, it was extremely difficult being disfellowshipped, living with my parents, having no friends, because my friends in the religion couldn't talk to me. My friends outside of the religion, my parents wouldn't, my mother would not allow them to come over. So I was completely alone for a year. I was disfellowshipped for a year.
Would your parents talk to you at all?
Yeah. Yeah. Because
I'm assuming your dad was cool with you. He's not a witness, right?
Right. And he was so upset that my mother did what she did. He was so upset.
Mom treating you like you were disfellowshipped?
No, because it was because I was living in the home. Okay. So it was okay. It was kosher, you know what I mean, to be able to, as long as you were living with the disfellowshipped person.
Yeah.
It was okay to speak to, and so
I've known people who still, on the podcast too, their parents wouldn't eat with them, wouldn't use the same bathroom as them, would not use the same eating utensils that they might touch or use.
Oh my God. That's
to really drive home the shame.
That's extreme, yeah.
But your parents were at least allowing you to still be part of the family. So
it wasn't that bad for me, for sure. It was more just, like going through an average day, but I felt like I was in prison, you know what I mean? And it was just so difficult because, like I said, I had nobody to talk to except my parents. And when you're, going through that, you're facing being a single mother, all your hopes and dreams, everything that you wanted to do now, isn't going to happen in the near future. Like for me, going back to school. And then the child. And all I could think was, how am I going to be a mother? Like, I was so scared. And it wasn't so much being scared of how am I going to raise this child? It was scared of bringing this child into this religion because I had no choice. I had nowhere to go. I couldn't support myself. You know what I mean? I was young. Who was going to watch my baby? Right? My mother wouldn't do it if I wasn't a witness. She flat out told me that. Like, you have to be a witness or else I'm not going to help you at all. Right? So what do you do in 1994, 1993, 94, respectively? And, your only choice is to fall back into this
Wow.
terrible pattern, and that's it. And I gave birth while I was disfellowshipped, and was disfellowshipped for 4 more months after that. So when I was at the Kingdom Hall and I go to the meetings, I would go to the meetings, being disfellowshipped. You come in like, right before the meeting starts, you sit down, and then I would immediately go out to the car after the meeting was over, which was fine with me. And then, but after my daughter was born, it was so weird because all of the witnesses were coming over and they wanted to see her, but I had to give her to my mother so that they could exchange, you know what I mean? Like conversation with my
How did
mother.
that feel?
Awful. It's like being a ghost.
Well, also, how did it feel knowing that you were handing your child, you're literally handing your child over to them? As a person who said earlier that you hated every second of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you have now been forced into a situation where you've got this child and they're doing you the disrespect and just the lack of dignity around. Now you've got to hand your baby to your mom so that they can take her and share her around the Kingdom Hall. Like that's
disturbing.
What's that show? It's like not that I've watched.
Oh, The Handmaid's Tale.
I only saw the first season.
Yes.
Tapped out, but it's like Handmaid's Tale type of stuff.
It's very much like The Handmaid's Tale. And I tell you, being a bibliophile, we talked about this a little bit. I'm an avid reader. I read that book back in the 80s by Margaret Atwood when it was first, first came out, and I loved it. And then when they made it into a series, I was like, oh, yes, how are they going to do this? Because it reminded me so much of the Jehovah's Witness organization. And there's even the whole, I think, organization in The Handmaid's Tale is called Gilead.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many relatable things. But yes, that's thank you for saying that, because yes, that is so true. That's exactly how I felt, was that it was like she wasn't mine. And I'm like, and then it was all these idiots, people I had no respect for at all, that were like, we want to see the baby. You know what I mean? Like that Seinfeld episode. I came to see the baby. You got to see the baby, And I'm like, no, stay away. But I had no choice in the matter. I had no.
You're playing the game you've got to play.
Had to.
You don't have many other options.
No, it sucked. But it didn't last very long after that. Like I eventually moved out. Thank God, for, special programs and lots of really good friends that helped me get my own place. And I was able to, at that time I think it was like TBCCA or something like that, where, it's for lower income people, they help, and they come and they do daycare and stuff. So I was able to get on those programs, and I was able to get a job, and that kind of fell into my lap, which was great, and it ended up becoming a career for me. And I was able to support myself, and and was able to get for a time. And then there's the yo-yo relationship with it. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess is the initial yo is
the initial yo.
You are now out on your own.
Yeah.
Doing your own thing. How did it feel to have that freedom?
Oh.
And I guess you weren't going. Oh wait. So you had come back to the witnesses.
Yeah.
So were you still attending meetings?
No,
were you
as soon as I got reinstated, I'm out of here.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
I was like, I am out of here.
Don't blame you.
Yeah, because it was like, I didn't want to continue to be disfellowshipped because that meant that, I did have some good friends in the religion. I have to say, I didn't hate everybody, you know what I mean? But I did have some people in there that I loved, and that I wanted to continue to have a relationship with. And it's funny because they've all left the religion since then. But and then of course my family, my mother's family, none of my father's family except for my uncle, my aunt and uncle were in the religion. And I was close to them too, on my dad's uncle, my dad's father, and my aunt. So it was for those reasons that I waited and waited and waited to get reinstated. But then, I just did not want to be, I didn't want to be around my mother anymore. Honestly, I just didn't want to be in that environment. It was not conducive to my daughter. And my mother is, I hate to speak disparagingly about my mother, but she is such a control freak that
she's a Jehovah's Witness.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that, so she was trying already to insert herself and cross those boundaries, of course, that we talked about, into, sort of, teaching these principles, in the beliefs to my daughter. And when she started to oh, there's the Bible storybook, and I'm like, oh no. And so, that's when I decided to move out. So at least things were copacetic, with my family, and I could talk to them and my friends,
So, take us through, I guess, a little bit of the yo-yo of the relationships as time went on.
Yeah. And what ended up happening, I found myself back in it again. I found myself back in the religion. I don't even know how it happened, to be honest with you. I think that my mother just putting so much pressure on me. And I had gotten married, and had my second daughter 5 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And she would have these gatherings, and it's like there were some normal people there, it seemed like. And my ex-husband, who ended up becoming my ex-husband, he actually got involved. So that's how that happened. And it was kind of like, oh, I don't know. Do you really want to do this? Like, this is crazy. But there is this mentality in the religion that if you are not a nuclear family, that perfect, father, elder, mother, pioneer, 2.2 whatever it is, children, there's something wrong with you. You're not good enough, and I think that growing up that way for me left such a stigma. People who grow up in divided households within the religion are stigmatized. No matter how you slice it, they are. And I didn't want to raise my children that way. I didn't want to be, I guess I was searching, and because I had been so far removed from it for so long, I thought, well, maybe it's different. Maybe, maybe I can balance it out. And because my husband was coming into it and really seemed to like it, I thought, well, maybe here's my chance at giving my children a stable nuclear, feeling and sense of belonging, because I just didn't want them to feel like they didn't belong. I guess it's really hard to try to understand what I think my thought processes were then. I was still in my early 20s. I had gone back to school and got my degree. I did a lot, everything I wanted to do. And it was hard because I had a child and, then one coming. So it was, I think I felt such an insurmountable amount of pressure from my mom and my friends that were still in the religion, who are also getting married and having children, like, hey, let's be a family. Let's, reconnect. And there was that, these are my Huckleberry friends. These were people who, we'd known forever because we were all the same age. There was like 7 of us who were born like every month in the 1970s, like in the same year. So we grew up together. And so it was this feeling of like, oh, yeah, I do want to be a part of that, not necessarily the religion itself.
I just have to say, it's interesting because you're obviously an intelligent, strong person who has said, self-proclaimed, that you hated every minute of being a Jehovah's Witness. And yet here you are later, feeling that pressure and getting sucked back in. And it's like this virus that lives within you. If you don't root it out, and that means breaking it all down and really seeing it all for what it is one of those things that can suck you back in. That happens to many people. And the episode that I think that I will release right before yours, so people probably have already, I guess by the time they're seeing this, they will have seen or heard it. Nia was the person I was talking to, and she had a 13-year-old. There was a 13-year-old who came into her congregation alone. No parents. The parents said, hey, you can go off with these crazy cultists, I guess. So this little 13-year-old girl comes into her congregation, and Nia wants to be friends with her. And Nia's mom says, no, you can't be friends with her. She's not one of us. I don't trust her. Until the 13-year-old girl gets baptized. And as soon as that happens, suddenly it's okay. Oh, you can be friends with her now. And Nia's notice is, oh, this is what it takes to get your approval, Mom. This is what it takes. I got to get baptized. And then I'll be good enough for you. Then you can be proud of me. Then I'll be worthy to be your child. And as she was saying it, I was writing it down, and we talk about it in the episode, but a lot of us have spent our entire lives trying to earn the love of these people. That's not love. You don't have to earn love. When your kid draws a horse and it looks like a blob, you're proud of him and you love him and you think that it's great because he drew a horse, right? Even though we all know it looked nothing like a horse.
Yes.
But you still love him, and you love that picture, and you're proud of him for doing what he did. And that comes automatically. But for Jehovah's Witness parents, it's like you're always trying to earn it from them.
Yeah.
Always trying to be good enough. And if you can earn it, that means you can also lose it just as easily.
Yeah. Well said.
Never on a solid foundation. It's not real love. It is control.
Absolutely.
But we 100%. Get stuck into it over and over again because we are wanting that love desperately because we've never really had it. So we just keep grabbing for it and trying to convince ourselves that maybe one day we can get it.
Yeah.
If only I can go back and do this or that or whatever.
Right. Exactly.
They don't have it to give. They don't have love. They don't know.
No, what it is essentially is they keep preaching to have unconditional love, right? Yeah. But they do just the opposite of that, where it's a love based on conditions. Mm-hmm. So if you don't meet these requirements, if you don't meet these conditions, we can't love you. How Hippocratic, you know what I mean? The hypocrisy behind that, where they're constantly saying, oh, it's unconditional love. God has unconditional love for you. Have unconditional love. No, they're doing the complete opposite of that. And it's infuriating when you think about it. And I really appreciate the way that you just put that was spot on, and very passionate, and that is exactly how it is in the organization. That's
And it
exactly how
hurts
you
us.
feel.
And it causes that thing where people keep going back, or people have a hard time letting go of it, because our whole lives we've been looking for love from these people. We don't have secure attachment with these individuals. It's never been secure. So we're always trying to get that, and, until we eventually realize we can't, and can start to let that go and realize that these people, they don't have it to offer. You're asking, you're trying to get water out of a dry well. There's nothing there. They just don't have it to give on a real healthy level.
Yeah.
They're giving what they've got, but it's not very healthy.
No, I completely agree. You feel like a tetherball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're tethered to this relation, to this organization, but it's sort of tenuous, and it's just, and then you just get you're just getting flying in all these different directions, and it's just such a difficult thing, because like you said, all we're doing is searching for love and some sort of security, which is another thing that drives me nuts, is how they talk about the congregations, and they talk about the organization being this safe, secure environment in place, and how the brotherhood, you know what I mean? And, just the fact they call themselves brothers and sisters, and yet there is so much, I'm going to go onto a different tangent here, but just the backbiting that goes on, the gossip. I mean, do you remember how many talks we had at like the district conventions back in like the 80s and 90s? I remember like there were at least 10 different series of, conventions that I had gone to where gossip was one of the biggest talking points, was one of the biggest. Like, why is this such a problem if we're all supposed to love each other so desperately? Like, that makes no sense to me at all. But it's sad, because they're really, what it comes down to is they are so bored with their own lives. They are just so bored. And I feel like they have this envy for people in the world, people who are just living their lives. I mean, the materialism that I saw especially in my area, I don't know if you had that where you were, but I mean, there is Jehovah's Witnesses rolling up in Benzes, and, these cars that are I think about it, and I go immediately, I'm at a loss for words, because it's just so mind-blowing how, these people who preach to be humble and to simplify and to live simple lives like Jesus did, and, have modesty, are, rolling, like the circuit overseer, got a Cadillac donated to him, you know what I mean? And they live in these huge McMansions. And that happened a lot in the congregations in my area. It was this competition of who had more money. And they were just like trying to be worldly. To me, that's the worldliest thing you can do, because I know worldly people who have tons of money, but you'd never know it.
Mm-hmm.
And that impresses me. That's what I'm impressed by, are people like that, who are humble, and they keep their lives simple, So again, it's the hypocrisy is mind blowing.
They live in an alternate reality every day, but they call themselves the real life.
Yeah.
We have the real life. There's everything they say is this projection.
Yes.
They're telling you, it's like brothers being used in the congregation. Yeah, we were being used. Not used in the way they thought it meant, but we were being used.
Yes.
And so, there's just a lot of the lingo that you can look at, and the lifestyles, way they live their lives, it's not what it purports to be.
Absolutely not.
So for you, getting back to the yo-yo aspect, so then you went back.
I went back.
With that husband into the organization.
Yes. So yeah. So he gets baptized, becomes a ministerial servant. They're grooming him to be an elder. And my ex-husband and I are friends to this day. We are still good friends, which is kind of funny to a lot of people, but we talk about this all the time because he's no longer, a witness. And he will always be like, remember when I was giving those talks and I would like throw up before every one of them? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I told you. He's like, I know. But yeah, there's this, it's such a classic example of being in a cult where there's this almost it's like a drug, where you're getting these accolades and you're getting, all of this positive encouragement that you might not have gotten when you were, younger and in your formative years. And that's sort of how he felt. He kind of grew up in a really big family and was like a middle kid and didn't get noticed too much. So when he went, and started being involved with Jehovah's Witnesses, they gave him that. They gave him that feeling of like, hey, you're what we're looking for. You're somebody who we think that would make a great leader, basically, in the congregation. And that made him feel really well, really, really good about himself. But that's it right there, is they prey on people who are weak, and nothing against my ex-husband. But at the time, I think they prey on the weaknesses. He wasn't a weak individual. He's not a weak
They prey on
individual.
the pain.
The pain. They just know like what to look for. You know what I mean?
Even if they're, because it's not like Jehovah's Witnesses have a Rolodex of everybody's vulnerabilities,
right?
But they're always out there and they're always around. And if you are a hurting person, they are offering, certainty, purpose, community. They're offering certain things that are going to feel good to a hurting person.
Yeah.
And so these things are attractive, and so it brings people in. And you said it is like a drug. Belief can be a drug and an addiction, just like alcohol or drugs or sex, or like so many different things that we can have in our lives can become that escape from the pain that we have. And instead of actually trying to do the hard work and get down into it and look at our pain and do the work to work through it, it's easier a lot of times to escape into something that just makes us feel good.
Yeah.
In the moments.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a sense of, I don't want to say euphoria, but there's a sense of like, oh, like, like you're saying, like I have like a purpose. I have a meaning, now. There's I think that is exactly what they do, is that they prey on people who are, like, for example, we had so many single moms in our congregation, so many. It was almost like you said, they have a Rolodex, almost, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's like they just knew like how to kind of seek them out and get them, because so many of these women or people with, maybe mental illness, whatever it was, they just know that those people are looking for acceptance. They are looking to be a part of something, that maybe is bigger than themselves, and a part of something that is like a family, where they don't they didn't have that. So that was really sad, because I would see that, like, from a distance, that happening, and thinking, oh, don't do it. Don't do it, and
then here you are doing it, right?
and then here I am doing it.
Mhm.
That tells you right there how, even though, like, as you said, like, I am a strong-willed person, and I always have been, I continue to be, but I did get weak there for a brief period in time. And I did go back because of the fact that, I thought I was doing the right thing, and did I ever see myself as an elder's wife? No, and then things came, sort of crumbling down, because well, I'll tell you what happened. So the B yo-yo, so this is, yo-yo one, whatever. So what ended up happening was, my father had passed away. And at that point, I really started to question how I felt about my spirituality. Because, I think that when you leave as Jehovah's Witness, when you leave, there is a part of you, despite how you might feel about it, that this was your connection to something higher. And when you leave, you feel like you are not allowed to worship to worship anything anymore, or to have a connection with a higher power anymore, which always bothered me, because I did feel, and I still feel, some sort of connection to the earth or the universe or something higher. I'm not agnostic or atheist. I just feel like there's something greater than me. That's just my I think I'm just was born a spiritual person. And it could be, the earth, you know what I mean? I just have that in me. There's people born with, they say, a God gene, but anyhow, so when my father passed away, I really felt like he wasn't gone, because of the fact that we had such a close connection. And as you know, Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe in an afterlife. They do not believe that the soul leaves the body. They believe that, when you die, that's it. You're 6 feet under, and that's it.
Waiting a possible resurrection at best.
Right. Which, what sounds crazier? An afterlife for a resurrection, you know what I mean? So I just didn't feel like, I could still feel my father's presence. I could still feel him, like, around me. And the events around his death were so, like, I saw him the night before he passed away, and he was fine. My father was a very robust, very physically active man. And he had come over the night before for, like, a family dinner. And the next morning, we get a phone call from my mother, and she's like, your father had a massive heart attack, and died. And, so that was, it was shocking. And, of course, what happens with Jehovah's Witnesses is, even though my father was not, he had been baptized, but he was inactive, right? They still had a memorial for him at the Kingdom Hall. And it was very powerful, because it was a testament to what a wonderful person he was, that it wasn't just like 100 people. They couldn't fit all the people in the Kingdom Hall. There was literally, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people coming to see my father. And most of them were not witnesses. And so we were there for hours. And I remember people saying to me, your father was such a wonderful person. And as, this whole thing is happening, I'm just thinking to myself, oh boy, like, would my dad have really wanted me to live the rest of my life you know, look at who his friends were. Like, look who's coming. They're not witnesses, you know? And so it was at that point, and it was in for my husband as well, my ex-husband, we were really starting to kind of already feel like it was time. And I remember going to what really, I think where I woke up and made a clean break and never went back was that defining moment that you always remember is being at an assembly. It was a circuit assembly, and we were there, and I had my daughters were on either side of me. And I just remember listening to the speaker and him saying, like, just like you had said before, projecting, you know, just projecting. And it all sounded like a foreign language. Like, all of a sudden it was that light bulb moment, you know, that flips, that switch gets flipped, and you're like, oh my God, like I could actually like see myself outside of my body, you know? And I went, I got to get out of here. So we immediately left, and we never went back. There was a time before this happened, that's the end story. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But before that had happened, I had gone through a lot of different things, you know, before I went back. So it wasn't just like getting pregnant, being disfellowshipped and stuff. It was, you know, there were a lot of different things that went on. So I was actually doing the circuit. Like, this elder had approached me and said, hey, do you want to talk about your story about, you know, leaving and being troubled youth and coming back in and now you're, you know, coming back in as a full-time witness, whatever you want to call it. And so I was doing these presentations for few different circuit assemblies, and then a district convention, which was so scary.
I've done it. I get it.
You know, like, I just remember being on that stage, and it was like 10,000 people in this arena, you know, and I had to talk about the most personal things in my life, you know, and I said, oh my God, what am I doing here? This is so crazy. So
Can I ask you, I have to ask you, the stories that you were telling, were they true? And what I mean is, were they as they really happened, or were they rather embellished to be more encouraging to the brothers and sisters?
I know exactly what you mean when you say that. No, I never embellished anything. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think they were pretty rough.
You didn't go up there and say, I've hated being every minute of one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
Did you?
It wasn't just that. It was sort of, you know, my life before I got pregnant and when I ran away, and I was, you know, I was experimenting with drugs and alcohol and
sure.
You know, doing all those things. I was really into punk rock music and was, you know, just sort of, I had moved, you know, at one point to the city, and you know, met a lot of people there, and it was a sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle, you know.
But in the end, aren't you having to say on the platform?
Yeah.
That
those experiences.
But also how happy you are to be back in the fold, back in Jehovah's organization. And was that true?
Oh no.
Right?
That was not true.
What I'm saying is that these parts are they're a farce.
Yeah, the I know what you mean now. That the part where you're like, oh, I am so happy to be back, and it's so wonderful, you know, to be part of the flock again. Sure. And you know, it's like I'm terrified right now. If you only knew.
There's so many of us who have been on those parts have been pushed by the people who create the parts and the circuit overseers and the district overseers to embellish, to make stories more than they are, to make them sound better than they are. You know, if they ask you your goals, and your goal in life, which was mine at that point, was to be an elder and, you know, have a family, that's not enough. You're the golden boy. You got to get up there and tell them that you want to at least serve where the need is greater, or go to Bethel or something. Like you have to, your goals aren't even big enough. You're being judged.
Oh, no.
Even in that, right? So
oh, absolutely. You got to make it sound like, all right, I'm, you know,
that's what I was asking with you, is if they were trying to get you to go the extra mile and really sell the thing.
Yeah. I think they do that. Yeah. I think they do that to everybody. I think that the elder who was sort of in charge of my presentations, he wasn't that bad. So I remember him, God, this is a really long time ago. So I'm really searching the hippocampus here in the archives, you know, for those memories. But I don't remember him putting a ton of pressure. I'll be honest, a ton of pressure on us, and those of us who were on the panel, to really embellish our stories. I mean, you know, I just said, yeah, I'd like to pioneer at some point, you know, something to that effect. You know, I maybe I did say, you know, I want to go into the full-time work.
And that you were happy being there, when the reality is that that's not really where you wanted to be.
No.
Also, you know, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy where you have kids that are not exposed to anything, and they've anything but dysfunction and trauma for the most part within their lives as Jehovah's Witnesses, and then they leave at 18, whatever. Of course, they go to sex, drugs, and rock and roll, whatever, because they don't know how to live in the real world, and they're just exploring and trying things and trying to see where they fit in, and then it blows up in their face because you have already explained how you were being controlled on so many different levels that then you were forced to come back. So, you know, even that, it's not just I just went out there and tried all the things, young brothers and sisters, and I just know that they're not healthy. No, you were set up to try them in an unhealthy way that is going to lead to it blowing up in your face, which is going to lead to you being back in the control, which is then going to lead to them finding you and putting you on that convention part.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. Well said. It's a whole thing. It's their shtick.
Yes.
That's what they do. Yeah. And you see it over and over again, repeatedly. When, you know, I look back now and I think about all of the different presentations that, you know, you would hear, they were always the same.
Mm-hmm.
It was always the same story. You know what I mean? It was just like, well, yeah, I went out and I did this and that, and I got involved in drugs, and yeah, it was great. And then it came back. Now I'm an elder. It's like,
yes.
It's always the same crap. You know what I mean?
It's never, I came back and now I'm just a regular publisher. It doesn't end there.
Right.
Even if you are, you gotta at least have aspirational goals. This is the first step towards you becoming more, because you're still not good enough. We got to let you know that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So you kind of laid out the end of your journey, so to speak, as far as, you know, the last thing that you attended. But what was the path toward actually leaving? You know, like you left the assembly hall or whatever, but how did you start to wake up? What happened with your husband? Because he had come into this as well.
Yeah.
You. So what helped you to wake up? What were the things, what got you to that point and him to that point?
Yeah. I think it was after my father died. Like I said, that was a huge part of me waking up, was that, you know, I believe in I believe in there's something after this, you know what I mean? And like I said, it could be just because I had such a close relationship with my father, that maybe that's what it is I just sort of feel his presence, but it might not be either. I don't know. I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person, but I'm not a religious person, you know. So that was a big eye opener for me. And what also had happened is, and this was really the pivotal point where the way that they are, and that the way they cannot help but to be the witnesses, right? Right after my father passed away, my husband and I were already like on the road, like to just sort of to kind of fade away. And my aunt had passed away shortly after that, like a few months later. So my uncle, this is not my father's brother. He had, they had no children. It was just me and my sister. So they had written out their will, and had left everything to us to be split equally. So during this time when my aunt was ill, I was going over there and I was taking care of my uncle because he was the early stages of dementia and needed help with certain things. And I lived right down the road from him. So, I would drive over every day and check on Uncle Henry and check on, make sure he's got dinner and whatnot. And he said to me one day when he was very lucid and very himself, I need to show you something. And I said, okay. So my husband was with me. We were together. So he's like, it's down in the basement. I'm like, okay. What's going on, Uncle Henry?
Yeah,
and I know. So we go down in the basement and he goes, I want you to hold on to your Aunt Teresa's ashes, because he goes, I know my memory isn't very good. And I don't want to misplace them. So he goes to look for them and they're gone. He goes, oh my God, they're not where they were supposed to be. I know I left them here right before you came over. And so we're like, oh, that's weird, And he goes, and there's something else I want to make sure, I do. He goes, we had the whole thing set up with power of attorney with him, the whole thing. We had signed the papers, my husband was going to be the executor of his estate, yada, yada, yada. And he goes, I just want to make sure that we've got it all right, because he goes, I was reading it the other day and it just doesn't make sense to me. There's some things that seem like they were changed. So he reads it, and he has me read it because he had forgotten his glasses or something. And I'm reading it, and this other couple in the congregation, who were known for preying on older people, had somehow taken advantage of the fact that my uncle was in these throes of dementia. They had inserted themselves behind our backs. We had no idea what was going on.
Wow.
Yep. And they had this brother, he was an elder. Okay. And his wife was a full-time pioneer. He had an uncle that was a lawyer. So the lawyer drew up all this paperwork, and they came and had my uncle sign everything. And my uncle had no idea what was going on. They just said it was something to deal with the religion, with like a medical directive. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, with the advanced medical directive.
Yes. It was something like they faked it and said it was something like that. So that was, my uncle didn't have much, you know what I mean? It wasn't like we were like, oh my God, we're not going to get the money, but it was just this, like you said, the boundaries, they think that they can just get in there and
whether there was money or not.
Yeah.
somebody coming in from the outside and inserting themselves in his will and taking advantage. It's elder abuse.
Yes.
It's terrible.
Yes. And I actually,
if there was $1 to his name, I will take you and sue you to the ends of the earth over this. I will wreck you over this.
Yes.
That is horrifying.
I know.
For them to do that.
Yes.
Horrifying.
It was horrifying. And, you know, their excuse was, oh, well, because you two aren't really doing well in the truth, you know what I mean? That we felt like it would be better if we took care of him, you know. And there you go. It was this, because you're fading out of the religion and you're not coming to meetings, and we can see that, you know, that it would be better for us to take care of all this. And I'm like, are you insane? So we did hire a lawyer and claim elder abuse. And at that point, it was just so difficult, and it was going to be so much of a challenge because my uncle was really deteriorating so fast. After my aunt died, he just went downhill immediately. And it just wasn't worth it, you know, in the long run. And they basically, you know, took everything. They got everything, all of my family heirlooms. There were many. Those are the only things that mattered to us at all, to my sister and I, were like just simple things like my great grandfather's chair, you know, some you know, some pieces of furniture. They took it all.
What absolute human garbage.
Yeah, absolutely. They are just the worst people. And they did try to do this again to another sister, an older sister in the congregation. I found out through the grapevine later on, but this time I think it was her nephew that was onto them. And they got into a lot of trouble. But karma, it always bites you in the butt, because, you know, going forward now, probably 15 years after this whole experience, their oldest son became a giant drug dealer in our area. And he's known.
I don't want him to have to pay for them being assholes, but
no, he's happy. He's like, you know, he's like a kingpin, you know what I mean? It's this, you know, I think he sells weed or something like that. But to disgrace, you know, his parents, the way he's disgraced his parents is wonderful, because they are disgraced. He's no longer an elder, cannot be an elder. They have no
they're
power.
Disgraceful on their own merits.
Yeah.
They don't need the son to do that. But that's
horrible people. And the kind of people that, to me, it's sociopathic behavior. You know, I remember having conversations with her, especially her, and I think that she was the mastermind behind it all, where she would never look you in the eye when she was talking to you. You know, there's an old sales trick where people will look at either like the middle, right, of your forehead like that, or your eyebrows. And she would do that. And I always picked up on it. I'm like, why aren't you looking me in the eye? You know, and there's something very devious and sociopathic about that. And I never trusted them.
Well, if nothing else, you know, again, a hallmark of Jehovah's Witnesses is that many of them are narcissists.
Oh, absolutely.
And so there is no empathy. So
no.
They just got to get with, you know, it's about them and how they think, how they feel, and what they feel they're entitled to.
Yeah. And it's funny because, you know, just like to kind of wrap this one up, the story of it's going on. I remember confronting her because I was teaching a class, and she actually had the audacity to come to this class that I was teaching. And I'm like, I pulled her aside and I said, what are you doing here? What do you think you're doing? And she's like, well, it's my right. Like I can take any class I want or whatever. And I said, no, you can't take mine. and I bounced her out of my class, and I said, I went to the administration. I said, you cannot let her, this woman, no way, put her in somebody else's class,
I have to ask, what were you teaching a class on? What was she interested in?
Oh, it was a holistic wellness class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
Ooh, that takes
she was really,
guts.
she was so, and this is another thing that happens with Jehovah's Witnesses, is that if they don't have families of their own, they're like parasites to other people. So they had this very parasitic relationship with my aunt and uncle. And I think she had always been very jealous of the fact that, my sister and I were blood relatives, were, close to my aunt and uncle. I think that just bothered her so much that, she came up with this delusional, methodical plan to, and I didn't care. All I cared about was, again, the family heirlooms, and some of them were from my great grandmother from Ireland, you know what I mean? Had, she had come over, and it's like, what are you doing with other people's heirlooms? It's just, it's sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sick.
I have my own experience with this that I don't think I've ever talked about, that I'm not going to get into, but I've seen it. Let's just say that it's gross.
Yeah. It's the worst.
It is. So you leave Jehovah's Witnesses behind. That resulted in, some level of shunning for you, because I know you didn't end up getting this fellowship or anything, but you faded away. So I guess, well, we'll get into the shunning aspect in a second. What are some resources that helped you along the path to, whether it's recovery or, healing from all of this? What are some of the things that really helped you?
Definitely, as I was saying before, I'm a perpetual learner. I just went crazy with the college thing after I could. Like, you know what I mean? After my second daughter, and after all of this weird stuff happened, and I just kept just going, because I just am interested in everything. And I was denied, us as witnesses, we were denied to learn about anything, growing up, right? So I went in there and voraciously just took a million classes and have, gotten specializations and certifications and degrees and blah, 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 blah. I think also, and that taught me how to learn, again, and I mentioned this before, objectively,
Sure.
And as in high school with Mr. Lamb, that taught me how to, that was the beginning, that was the seed of, learn, like just seeing things at all angles. And another thing was I, had really never looked into what would have been considered apostate, material. But I remember years and years ago, I picked up a book that I can't remember how I heard about it, but I have it right here, and I was showing you before. And it's called "I'm Perfect, You're Doomed" by Kyria Abrahams. And this book, I mentioned, it is hilarious. This is just sort of her experiences in the religion with a very comedic take. So it's not so much going into the history of the religion or anything like that. It's just her personal experiences. And I remember when I read this, just going, "Oh my God, yes, 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 yes." It's so funny, so funny. And then I started to kind of reach out and look up, like when the internets became a thing, because this is a long time ago when
Right.
I left. I was looking for support groups. I was looking for, groups in the area. I was trying to organize groups of friends of mine that were ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, where we could, just kind of hang out and talk about it and our experiences. And, that never really happened because it was, as you know, when you talk about it's such this whole experience growing up as a Jehovah's Witness and any cult. So, I know that you interview people from all different religious backgrounds and different types of belief systems. I think we can all identify and all agree that when we talk about it, it's an energy drain. You know what I'm saying? You're pooling so many feelings are happening and pooling within you. And you're just, you're just exerting so much energy because it's such a difficult thing to talk about. But at the same time, it's great to talk about because it's extremely cathartic. It's extremely therapeutic. So I was really reaching out, to just talk about it. And the only other person that I had besides a few of my friends was my sister. And my sister and we would just go on these tangents and talk about like how awful it was for hours. And then afterwards we'd be like, oh, I'm so tired of you. Do you need some coffee?
Need a nap.
Yeah, need a nap. Exactly. So, so then I just was, when the social media started coming up in Facebook and things like that, I was looking at, groups on there that were, survivors of, Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever. And it wasn't until recently that I actually found some over the past couple of years, I think, because there really weren't that many resources for us, except therapy. And I've been in therapy since I was in my early 20s, I think. Mm-hmm. And I consistently go just because it's maintenance to me. It's mental maintenance for me to be able to talk about these things, because no matter how removed you become from the religion, it's always inside of you. There's a part of it, it's like you mentioned before, that sticks to you, like gum at the bottom of your shoe. You know what I mean? It's just so hard to remove it completely. And it's always
not just your religion, it's how you react, it's how you move through the world. It's
exactly
how you feel about things. It's how you see yourself or who you trust or don't trust.
Absolutely.
Perfectionism, it's social anxiety, it's so many things.
It shapes your whole worldview. It shapes your perception of everything, of everyone, of everything that you encounter in life. Mm-hmm. And you can't change that because it is your way, right? It's the way. It's your way of life. It's not just a religion, right? Where you go and you go to church on Sunday and you're like, bing, bang, boom, do, I'm out of here. I got to lead my life. No, being a Jehovah's Witness is, for those of you who don't know, it's 3 meetings a week, or it used to be 3 meetings a week. I think they got rid of one of them, right?
Yeah, but you're still supposed to do it at home. You're supposed to have
okay.
study. So.
Okay. Yeah, that happened after I left. Yeah. But you're reading the Bible every single day. You are, it's constant. It becomes your way of life. You lose sight of yourself. You lose sight of who you are as a human being. It's almost like it's like something out of an Asimov novel, where you're like a robot and you just don't know like how to interact with other people, period. You know what I mean? Regardless of whether or not they're in the religion. Your identity, exactly. You lose that. Or you just didn't have it.
Never had a chance to get it. Identity. Yeah.
Yeah. You didn't have it to begin with, which is very, very, very scary and weird. Mm-hmm. You were never given a chance to create your own identity, So anyhow, getting back to, to other things that sort of kind of helped me was, I remember watching the Leah Remini Scientology. I think a lot of your, you probably had a lot of people who've maybe mentioned this. I don't know, but
Oh yeah.
yeah. And that's such a great series because it's so similar, in so many ways to Jehovah's Witnesses and other cults. But that really helped me a great deal. And then when she did the special on Jehovah's Witnesses, I was like, oh my God, like, I can't wait to watch this, So I remember waiting for it to air, and I'm watching it and wow, this is what we need. This is what we need. We need more of this. We need these, we need this platform to expose what's going on in this religion. And I know the response to that was really, really positive. And then I know that one of the panelists or one of the members of that, one of the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses was Lloyd Evans. And so I ended up contacting him, and he got in touch with me and sent me his book, which is called The Reluctant Apostate.
Can you hold that up with one hand, or is that a two-hand?
I know. I can.
Big book.
It's like do bicep curls with this book is so substantial. It is just a chunk of a book.
Yeah,
and I pre-interview, we talked about this a little bit, but I have not read the whole thing. I mean, look at this, but what he's amazing because he has gone into the history of Jehovah's Witnesses from the very beginning. And he explains in great detail, just the beginnings of it. So if you don't know a lot about Jehovah's Witnesses and the religion and how it started, read this book because it is an objectively written book, it's a well-researched book. This is not, a book that is just sort of a lashing out or a slanderous type book. It's very neutral, I find. And, I think it's interesting because, he has his YouTube channel called John Cedars, and it's an amazing channel. I've learned so much about a religion that I was in for so long that I've learned in maybe a 10-minute video that he's done, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've learned more in that one video than in a whole lifetime almost of being in that religion.
They didn't tell us anything about our own religion. They didn't tell us the truth about our own religion.
No. And this is all factual. This is all in the public domain. This is not like, guys, if you are like just waking up and really scared to leave and even fearful of the word apostate, because I know that when I heard that word when I was younger, just the word apostasy or apostate was scary. That was a word that was associated, with people who were satanic or had been, had something demonic going on with them. But don't be afraid of that because it isn't, he is not the devil. Okay. This man is just phenomenal. And the way he structures his videos are just, it's sort of like a dummies, Jehovah's Witnesses for dummies kind of a thing, and I love that because there were things that I never knew, and that you can Google it, people. You can Google that Jehovah's Witnesses own shares in General Dynamics and Pratt Whitney and war machines. Basically, they have plenty of money, and there's a whole video he did on the love letter to Hitler. What was that called? The Declaration of.
I don't remember what it was called.
It's something, and you can Google that, and it comes up, and it's a whole thing about Rutherford and his whole.
You just Google Rutherford and Hitler, and you'll
Rutherford Hitler love letter to Hitler, and it comes up as it shows you the letter. You can read the letter. It's not made up. It is about basically Rutherford trying to get Jehovah's Witnesses out of the concentration camps, I believe. But in the same sentence, he talks about how horrible the Jews and the Irish are. So keep the Jews in the concentration camps, but let the Jehovah's Witnesses go. I mean, this is real. This is a real letter. All the affairs that were going on. Yeah. It's interesting. So his channel has helped me out so much. I know it's helped a lot of other people coming out of the religion as well. It's an education.
Yeah. Is there anything else that helped you? Or
your podcast, for sure.
Well,
your podcast, and now that you're doing the YouTube channel, any time that you hear, oh, I was a Jehovah's Witness. You know what I mean? It's like, really? I was too. Like, people just don't understand it. You know, it's very difficult to talk to people about it because their first reaction sometimes is, oh, well, Catholics are the same, or Protestants are the same, or, you know, and you're like, no, it's not the same.
No, they just don't get it. They've not been there, or they've been hurt by their own religion. Maybe they were hurt by the Catholics or the Protestants. And so they just lump everything together, or they're just not ready to face their own issues in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because it's like, you know, you say that and they'll say, why? And then you go into the whole thing and they're like, oh, really? You're like, yeah, really? Like, you know, I tell them my story, like I'm telling you my story. And they're like, oh my God, I had no idea that. I just had to go to confession. That's it. You know, it's like, I wish it could have been that easy for me.
Sure. And one of the things that separates the religions from the cults is shunning. Okay?
Yes.
So for you, how has shunning come into play? Who are you shunned by? Or, you know, because I know you're fated. How has that affected those relationships that you once had?
I think that honestly, it's more me that has shunned them.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. I've talked about my mother, and our relationship is very strained because she is, she's a fanatic. She is a complete and utter fanatic. So it's hard to have a conversation with her without her inserting some witness jargon in there, you know, and then I have to talk to her and say, Mom, I don't want to hear it. Please respect me the way I respect you. Like, look, here's the thing. Okay. I will always say, if it works for you, go for it. If you love it and it's your thing and it's helped you in some capacity, then go for it. Right? It didn't work for me. It wasn't my thing. It just wasn't my thing. So I left. Okay. And so when I'll say that to witnesses, you know, because I've encountered them so often because I live in this area where I grew up, you know, and I'll say that I'm like, hey, you do your thing. I'm not judging you. You do it. If you love it that much, good for you. But it didn't work for me. It wasn't for me. And they don't know what to say when you say that.
They can't. No, there's no live and let live or agree to disagree inside cults.
It's so one-sided.
Or get out.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
So it's kind of been forced you to set boundaries, it sounds like, with your mother. And does she abide by those boundaries? Or have you had to instill consequences in order to enforce the boundaries? Or has it just gotten to a place where it's like, I'm just not going to do this thing?
Yeah. The consequences are, for me, I think that it's because it's that now my life is in my control. Mm-hmm. I have control over my life finally, right, is that you get to set the boundaries. You get to set your own rules, right? You get to allow who you want in your life.
Sure.
Right? You can get rid of the toxic people finally. And they were all toxic to me, except for a few, who are not witnesses anymore and are still my friends. And that's another thing really quick, is that growing up as a witness, and you can relate to this, you can't choose your friends. So that's why I was always a misfit, is because half the kids in the congregation, we had none of the same interests, nothing. I was a tomboy. I liked to play sports. I liked music. And half the other kids in the congregation, and it was more like, I like to play with the boys, you know what I mean? And that was kind of frowned upon. So you're stuck with the girls, they're playing with their Barbie dolls and whatever, and want to play house, or like, oh, I want to marry an elder when I grow up. And I'm like, I want to be a documentarian. And they're like, what is that? You know what I mean? So you don't have a choice. You don't get to choose your friends. And that's such a huge part of growing up as a witness, is that you have no choice but to sort of this pre-selection of people that you're bound to. And that's in itself is just sucks. So it's like, when you get out of it, finally, and you're able to choose the people that you want, that you actually love and want in your life, there's such an amazing sense of freedom there. So the boundaries now I set for myself clearly, and I have for a really long time. And with my mother, I have to set those boundaries. So when she does start going off on a tangent, I will stop her very politely as I can, and just tell her to either, if we're on the phone, it's okay, Mom, I'm going to hang up now. Or, if she's here, you got to go, because I'm not going to listen to this anymore. The problem, my husband, yeah, no, I refuse. Like I said, I've interacted with, oh God, there was this one place when I retired, like I said, about a year and a half ago. And there was this one witness that I had known my entire life. And unfortunately, this facility that I was working in, we had a lot of witnesses come in. And that was just very difficult. And but I knew that I was going to have to, stand firm and let them know that I am not interested in what you have to say to me if it's going to be about the religion. If you want to talk about the weather, if you want to talk about the Red Sox, if you want to talk about, the Celtics, yeah, that's fine. But I absolutely will not talk about the religion. And they have nothing else to talk about.
No, that's their whole life. And
yeah, they are the most vapid people you will ever meet, because that's all they're about. They're Jehovah's Witnesses first and foremost. They have nothing going on.
It's their entire identity.
Yeah. But you know what the thing is too, is I say that, and in the same sentence, I will say there were a few who were very interesting people. They're not all bad, you know what I mean? They're not bad. I shouldn't say bad people, but there were a few of them that were very interesting and very, they're, very intellectual, and it was just sad to me that their circumstances did not allow them to grow out of the religion. But anyhow, so this facility that I was working at, there were a lot of witnesses that came in. And so, I had to, like, they would go under their spiel, you know what I mean? And it was like, no, just don't even go there with me, So they all know the witnesses that I run into here. It's kind of like a side eye, like, and then it's like, oh yeah, no, don't even come up to me. Don't do it.
Right. So then what would you say, is there anything left unsaid? You know, I normally ask people, so, you know, what would you say to someone who shuns you today? And maybe you have some people in mind that you would direct that to in particular. But I mean, do you have anything that you would like to say to them or to say to somebody? Or maybe there's something you would want to say to your mom if you had the chance. But
oh God, so many things, so many things.
Obviously, without trying to get into every aspect of Jehovah's Witnesses and breaking it down, but
right.
is there something personal that you would want to say, just person to person, just Jael to Jael's mom, or to if this other person was sitting in front of you, how would you connect to them, human to human? What is something you'd want to say to them?
I think to crystallize it, right? Because like you said, there's so many emotions.
Sure.
Right. I would say I'm happy. I'm happy.
That's really all that needs to be said, isn't it?
Because they don't know. When you tell a Jehovah's Witness, and you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and you say to them, I am so happy. I'm so happy since I left that religion, because I never had, I haven't had the type of anxiety or the depression since I've been in that religion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the happiest I've ever been. They don't know what to say because they are so used to people being like, oh, this world, I'm so depressed. I just, that they feed on that. They're like, you know what I mean? They love it and they just can't help themselves, So when you say to them, I'm happy, I'm great, I am doing great, and really earnestly, honestly, mean it, because they're masters, you know what I mean? Like they know it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think that they just don't know what to do with that. And they're like, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. They don't believe that people can truly be happy.
No.
And let's face it, a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are not happy.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
Yeah, of course.
And they're on their journey.
Of course.
But that's what they expect. They want to see you to hit rock bottom they want to see you hurt, because then they hope that you'll come back. So
exactly.
I'm glad that you have found happiness. And honestly, I like that response, because it's just about you.
Yeah.
You don't need to help them or to teach them anything or whatever. They're not going to listen anyway.
No, they're their own people.
Okay.
And that's the thing about the religion and spirituality is unique. It's individualistic. Sure. It belongs to each and every one of us personally. Mm-hmm. So going back to the religion trying to cram its beliefs down your throat, and then all these made up principles and rules by men that they're just is shoving down your throat. It just is such a difficult thing to separate yourself from that when you leave. But it will happen for you. So those of you who are contemplating leaving or thinking about it, or, are on your, taking those steps, you will be happy. You will. I was born and raised in that routine.
It takes work. You don't just leave Jehovah's Witnesses and boom, happiness. That's not how it works. You may have boom, relief, and we can mistake relief for happiness, but that's not necessarily happiness.
Yeah. Like I said, you're like a tether ball. You know what I mean? There's still that part, you're still kind of tethered to it in some capacity, because I know that my next step, right, as an ex-Jehovah's Witness would be to disassociate myself, to write the letter. I haven't done that yet. It is in my plan, but I'm waiting for something to happen. I couldn't do that right now while my mother is still alive. I don't want to bring that kind of pain onto her. So my plan is that once she passes away, then I will finally do that. But it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean?
It's up to each person how they want to exit, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have already disassociated myself. You know what I'm saying? In my mind, I'm totally disassociated from it, but officially, that will come, and that will feel really good. But it's, everybody is different. Everybody's journey is so different. And I think that the best thing, and it's, if you're leaving now, it's a good time because there's so much support. There was none when I left. There was no support. There was nothing at all, and like I said, I've done that yo-yo relationship with this religion where I've been in and I've been out and I've been in, I've been out. And
you're happy.
And I'm happy. And it will happen for you too. You will reach that point because you did it for yourself. Mm-hmm. You've reached that point where you're individually as a person, as a unique human being, you have finally found your truth. Mm-hmm. Right. And I said that before, it's not someone else's truth. It's your truth. So you have to find what your truth is.
Right. So then that's a big part of the process of becoming happy, is becoming authentic. So what do you like about your life today? What is it that you enjoy? And is there anything, I don't know, do you have any aspirations? Are there any things that you want to do in your life that maybe you never got a chance to do, growing up? What is it that you love about life today for yourself? And what would, if there is anything that you have on the list, is there anything that you're wanting to do?
Well, definitely. I think I go back to a principle that I learned a very long time ago. And that is that you can only be happy when you are in the present. Mm-hmm. You cannot dwell on the past because your happiness doesn't lie there. You can't dwell on the future, right? Mm-hmm. It's the here and the now. So I am very happy being in the present, and being in the present is a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing to learn how to do. And I can tell you that I'm not always in the present. You know what I mean? There's those moments where like, oh, I got to do this.
Oh, well, yeah. Nobody, right? It's just like being happy. Nobody's happy every second of the day.
Yeah.
But because we're all human.
Exactly. We're all imperfect, right? Imperfect human beings. Yeah. So, but if you can sort of maintain some semblance of happiness just by trying to enjoy the small things, because I think growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, you're always thinking about the past, right? You're always studying about the past, biblical past history and prophecy and whatnot, right? So you're always thinking about that. Or you're always thinking about the future. You're thinking about Armageddon. You're thinking about, what's it going to be like in the paradise? When I see my loved ones come back, it sounds so crazy.
That's when you'll be happy, is in the paradise.
Right. So it's like growing up as witnesses, you don't really learn how to be in the present and just enjoy the here and the now. You're always living in the past and you're always living in the future. Mm-hmm. Right? There's no middle ground, none. So that is something that I can say I'm very happy. I'm happy with where I've gotten in life. I'm almost 50 years old, and I have two amazing children who fortunately were involved a little bit in the religion when they were younger, hated it. Had a lot of some PTSD from it, definitely, but they are amazing, smart, intelligent, talented, beautiful human beings. And I'm so proud of them. I have an amazing husband who is supportive. He is brilliant. He is going through cancer right now. My husband is going through he was diagnosed back in May with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but we're okay because we're living in the present. We're taking it day by day. If I was a Jehovah's Witness and this had happened, I'd be freaking out. Freaking out. My mother, when she first heard about about his cancer diagnosis, freaked out. Like, Mom, you don't have cancer. This isn't about you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like we're taking it day by day. And my husband fortunately, he's never been a Jehovah's Witness, never will be a Jehovah's Witness, has a wonderful attitude. His prognosis is fantastic. We just actually got the results this week. And when you go through something like this, like cancer, you always wonder, like, oh God, what did I do? No, I never did that once. He never did that once, because you just don't. It's like, it happens. It happens to people, and it has nothing to do with God. It has nothing to do with what kind of person you are and whether or not you deserved it or you didn't deserve it or whatever, you know what I mean? It's just something that you get through. And we can honestly say that we are just grateful for every day and all of the little things in life. And it teaches you how to not sweat the small stuff, to use like an old platitude, right? But it's true. It really, really teaches you to just sort of be in the moment, because it's part of your journey.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to tell your story today. This is a moment, right? You're being in a moment right now.
Absolutely.
And it's something that will help other people in their moments, as they are thinking about their own lives and processing it through listening to your story and, of course, everyone else's. And I'm glad that, now you got to contribute to one of the resources, right?
Yes.
There weren't a lot of resources back when you left. There are today. And so I'm glad I got to meet you and have this conversation.
You too, Michael. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.